Are you willing to tell your family that they are being bigots?
Do you want me to let you lick a samosa off me? Like, I don't understand.
So I'm still going to date your son. Angelica wants you to shut up.
Yeah. I want you to feel my empty chakras. I thought if I slept with a British person, years of colonialism would like just be erased in multiple orgasms.
Stop comparing us to food. Oh my God.
Welcome back to Similar Differences with Angelica and Inez. How's your day been, Inez?
Oh, it's been lovely. I woke up feeling hella sexy, which is amazing. I put on a bit of makeup, listened to Nelly Furtado, got my groove on, ready for this chat. How's your day been, Angelica?
The complete opposite. I woke up out of bed in pain, still from the gym workout that I did on Monday. It's now Wednesday. Why am I feeling this pain? I don't know. But anyway, I will drink my protein and hope that will help.
Amazing.
So that's how my day's been going. So before we begin, please follow our Instagram Similar Differences podcast. Share this podcast around and leave a review for us if you're feeling really generous. It really helps the podcast get out to more people, and we want more people to learn and hear about our experiences and just share their experiences as well. We have been receiving such sweet, amazing feedback. So anyone that has shared or sent me or Inez a message, we just appreciate you so much, and we're thankful for your feedback as well.
As always, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and the Wanamadigal people of the Darug Nation, whose land on which we gather here today and record on. And I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders listeners with us today. Today, we will be discussing interracial dating, sex, romance, intimacy, the whole deal. And before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that we can only speak from our experience. Angelica identifies as
straight,
and I identify as bi, and we'll be describing our experiences, and we will be using the pronouns he/she because those are what our partners have used in the past. So just bear that in mind. The first thing I want to unpack is being called exotic, which, look, I used to think was a massive compliment, but if we unpack it, exotic means introduced from another country, out of place, unusual, foreign. Alien? So let's imagine for a minute you're at a party, some cutie McDuty looks at you at the bar, and they come up to you and say, "You look so beautiful, like you're introduced from another country." Dang, girl, are you foreign or alien? Can we just absolutely acknowledge how goddamn insulting that sounds? And I don't think it's it's not a moderator word. It's a word that is put in place to say you are beautiful despite being Indian. You are beautiful despite being black, etc. And I'm not your exotic girlfriend because your world is just as different to me as mine is to you. You could be my exotic boyfriend or my exotic girlfriend. Should we, maybe switch roles? Would you like to feel foreign or othered or strange? There's a whole culture in you that I just don't understand, Angelica, where do you think the term exotic comes from?
Also, very quick side note, stop comparing us to food. Oh my God. Honey, cocoa, coffee, caramel, chocolate.
I don't want to be compared to chocolate anymore. Stop. What? Like, why am I cocoa this or chocolate? Like, even like velvet chocolate.
Oh
even
my God.
like what is that? Stop. You're not going to eat me.
Well,
stop.
No.
I mean, anyway.
Okay.
But just it just needs to stop. I'm not cocoa beans.
Cocoa beans?
I've been called cocoa beans.
No, you have not.
Yeah, like the cocoa beans, like with the actual chocolate. I've been called that before.
Oh my God.
Like, what the hell? You can't. All you need to say is you look nice.
That's it, baby. That's it.
Why food?
Why food? I think it also comes into not seeing us as real people.
Yeah.
Do you think white women are going called vanilla? Ooh, my eggshell ivory. Ooh, baby. Give me that sweet, sweet cream. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's fucking saying that.
It goes back to the whole dehumanization thing. Anything that describes us is in a way that devalues and dehumanizes our bodies.
Yeah.
We are seen as not human, but we're seen as objects. We're seen as things that are other. We're compared to food. We're compared to animals. Oh my God, I'm not even going to touch the animal.
Whoa.
The animal
Okay.
one. Like, we're compared to different things other than just the human existence that we are.
Yeah.
Like the human being that we are. Like,
Exotic comes
why?
from.
And
Well, I think the term exotic comes from a whole bunch of different things that have manifested over the years, particularly starting with colonization and what has happened in different countries. And I'll speak from the African context in particular because that's what I'm most knowledgeable about. So across Africa and other regions where there's Afro descent people, when colonization really became rampant and came in, a lot of the women were very hypersexualized for their features, for what they looked like, how they moved, how they would do things. And you can even see it in a lot of the historical texts today and a lot of the imagery that comes out of some of the historical documents that relate to colonization. You see how the women were drawn to have very big breasts, huge bums. Like, I'm not saying that that's not what we have. It was very accentuated because they were looked at as purely just sex symbols, purely just icons that are for male pleasure, for cis male pleasure, I should say. And then from there, that's really where that exotic term came in. Oh my God, she's different to the cis white woman, different to that very colonial beauty standard of slim, really fair, long hair, all of that kind of stuff, blue eyes. Over time, women from African regions or just who are Afro descent have been put up to that image of beauty or exotic beauty that's been given to us. And so when people see us now, or at least from what I've experienced, they go, oh, you're so exotic looking. And so now you see a lot of us being sought out for those features because they're seen to be different and from that norm, that white beauty norm. And it comes from a long history of that being ingrained into the minds of essentially men and that heteronormative male standard of beauty that, you know, governs the world. And even from like the things to do with my hair, like when I have my braids in, I remember one time being stopped at a restaurant when I was leaving a friend's birthday, and this random group of guys were just like, oh wow, you look so exotic, those things on your hair, like they look so like,
Those
I'm like,
things.
yeah,
Those things.
those things.
You
I was just kind of like,
pack it up, boy.
goodbye. And just kept walking. I just found it the most putrid thing because it's like, because that type of hair is different, and again goes back to the imagery that has been drawn up of women from these who are Afro descent from that colonization time. They would give, you know, if you had braids, if you had these different hairstyles, they were seen as making you too beautiful or making you too you know, this different type of thing that I want to seek out. And even when I think about slavery, a lot of those hairstyles and that sort of thing were stopped because, you know, it was a way to suppress, you know, African people.
Yep.
But there was also an element of suppressing that because the women were seen as too beautiful with those different hairstyles compared to the white woman. And I don't want to mention the multitude of horrific sexual violence that occurred during that time, but I think we all know the abuse that a lot of those women faced. And it comes from an internalized feeling of, oh, they're so exotic, I can control that. I want that.
Yep.
And that still is happening today, which is very much disgusting.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's been years of that being ingrained into our society.
I think I have dated so many people that have used my race and ethnicity as like a pawn in their sexist, racist bingo. They're like, how many can I get? Let me get all the Pokemons, the African, the Indian, the Asian, the Italian. Let's get them all. We're not objects. I'm not some scorecard on your tally that you can just knock off and be like, wow, I've never tasted that before. That's exciting. That's super gross. That's super gross. Like they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Why is the beholder always a cis, white, hetero man? Even though I'm bi, I still feel myself like dressing for the male gaze. And I'm always dressing for the white male gaze. Even when I'm dating women, that makes no goddamn sense. And very similar to you, when Britain colonized India, everybody saw success as fair skin and like, we have fair and lovely. And like, even me, I'm light skinned, I'm from North India, but I still wanted to like look fairer. Yeah. And I craved all this white validation, and I saw my own race as lesser. So for the majority of my dating life, I've only really dated white people, unfortunately. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to get in so much trouble for that, but it's true. I feel like I never wanted to date my own race because I thought they just reminded me of too much like my family. I was like, why would I want to date anybody that looks like my mum or my dad? That's freaking gross. Do you think that you, like in terms of interracial dating, do you think that you've had some sort of like internalized racism, or like you've craved white validation in some way?
I think to some extent, my experiences are quite unique, where I feel like I've got a mixture of internalized racism or just internalized hatred to men in general. Um, that comes from a lot of the personal experiences that I've grown up with, feeling like a lot of the people that were male figures in my life, what I had gone through, what I had seen, were horrific, and I would never wish upon any girl to ever see in their life. And that over time really ingrained in me a type of hatred for men that still didn't make me feel like I wasn't, I guess, attracted to them. I was not attracted to people in general.
Yeah.
I didn't like the idea of it, didn't want to be around anyone. And then that was even more so for people from my background. I think when you experience a lot of specific violence that relates to one culture, that plus just the beauty standards that have existed within this Australian context and the racism that exists towards Black people, you mesh it all together and it becomes this weird internalized type of racism towards your own cultural group. And I just had this wall or this facade that I'm like, nope, I don't want to be sought out by anyone from my race.
Yep.
I don't want to be with anyone from my race, but that extended to everyone.
Yeah.
I was like that, virtually extended to men of all different backgrounds.
Yep.
But the ones that had specific stereotypes attached to them relating to violence, maybe I could describe it as a hierarchy in my mind, where I was like, if I was to date someone or if I was to be with someone, Black men were at the bottom. Not because of just from them being Black men, it's that plus the experiences I had gone through.
Oh, absolutely.
Now,
I can relate to that.
Yeah, like it's, and then everyone else was still there. But I never actually really saw the white man at the top.
Okay.
If I'm giving,
Interesting.
I think for me, I was also just very frustrated by the racism that I experienced by them personally. So
Yeah.
I just never saw them at the top. And then to be quite frank, I didn't see them as attractive. Anyway, so I can't give exact details as to what that hierarchy would look like, but that's what I would kind of visualize it as. That changed over time.
Yep.
So as I became more aware of myself and my Black identity and what internalized racism was, I then realized, hang on, yes, I've experienced these things from this amount of like hurt and trauma from people related to my background, but why am I hating them even more when I've experienced trauma from people who are also from other backgrounds too?
Yeah.
This society has made me hate myself and hate my Blackness so much to the point where I just automatically put Black men at the bottom. Now it's just completely, everyone's just on an equal playing field to me. I don't see anyone different, but I'm still very much frustrated at men in general. Yeah.
I think for me, I always thought when I was dating white men or women that, white people are easier to date because they don't have too much like struggle. I don't even know how to describe it. I was just like, they're easy. There's no cultural clash. There's no language barrier, which I'm just feeding into racism just by doing that anyway. Subconsciously, I think also because of the exoticism that I also played into, I was like, how can I make myself like the most attractive candidate in the dating pool? And I was like, let's just play up your racial ambiguity. And it was ridiculous. I was like, oh my God, guess my race. That's fun. That's so gross. Why was I doing that? But I I think the biggest thing I would take away from dating, especially when I was young, I'm going to tell a story and you're all going to get angry with me and also laugh. But I didn't know the difference between someone being truly attracted to me and someone just fetishizing you. Because when you're younger, I don't think you know the difference. One particular story comes to mind, and I met this dude at a bar and we were flirting, we were vibing. We went on like a few dates, which were just so strange. But then we have like these weird dates, and then we finally end up having dinner together and brings me into his house. And I haven't seen his bedroom yet. That's a whole can of worms that I'll get to in a second.
Mhm.
But he is very spiritual. I have nothing against spirituality. I'm very spiritual as well. He is talking about the vegetables that he's cooking, and he's like, isn't it so beautiful that vegetables come from the ground and like they bring up and like they give you energy and they're built from dirt, isn't that beautiful? And I'm like, okay, you're putting soy sauce on some ginger, mate, relax. Oh no. I was like, yeah, literally just chill out, dude. And then we ate the dinner, and then I think he played me a song. Don't ever play me music on a date. I will kill you. Don't do that. Don't do that. When I tell you, I went into his room. I was so delusional. I was like, nah, this is just a coincidence. So his entire bedroom looks like an Ishka catalog. And there is, I kid you not, a picture of Ganesh. There's
Oh
a
my
picture of
God.
Ganesh in his bedroom. And he has, I think, at least 2 Om tattoos.
Every part of my body is cringing.
It's so gross. But I think I was like, oh, I've never, like, this person likes me so much and they're so handsome. And then I asked him, like, oh, have you ever been to India? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, how long were you there? He's like, like 6 months. And I was like, oh, yeah, cool. This makes sense. The ridiculous part of this story, because I was still like, no, I think he just really likes me, and like he likes India, like that's fine. He doesn't even, I don't think he knows that I'm Indian. I don't think I mentioned it. So one night I'm really drunk and I decide to text him. And I think I was talking with my friends about, whether or not maybe this guy's an Indian thing, maybe not. Maybe I'm just cool, maybe that's why he likes me. So I text him and I say, I want you to feel my empty chakras. Isn't that just so beautiful? Isn't that just fucking amazing? So I do, and he's like, haha, what do you mean by empty chakras? I think he was complimenting me, and he was talking about my brown skin. And I just asked him point blank, with a lot of liquid courage in me. I was like, do you have an Indian thing? And he's like, no, not specifically. I was like, sir, do elaborate. I would like a thesis on this explanation. With his full chest said, you have brown skin, and curves and the big lips and the big eyes. And I am, unfortunately, too whitey. This man was like, oh, you're just the opposite to me, and that's why I found you really attractive. And I was like,
Oh my God, Lord.
okay.
I can definitely relate to that fear of being fetishized. Like it is a really gross feeling, and it's very, like, I guess now that we're older, it's very much obvious when that is happening to us, and it's very much more clear. But at the same time, sometimes it's not until you're in a situation and you're like, hang on, you listening to all this R&B and then going, oh, my favorite chocolate girl or some shit like that. The reason why I didn't really want anything to do with the white man was because I just didn't want to feel that gross feeling of being sexualized for certain features, or being putting myself in a position where that fetishization can lead to something that's traumatic, or as we know, that can lead to violence. Like, I was quite open about me not being that attracted to people because of the frustrations I had with the human race.
Big mood.
But I would have people say like, oh, how come you're not like into people, or but you have all these features attached to you, like, you got to use them, you got to bring them out. So like I had that stuff said to me, and I'm just
bring them out where?
I'm like, what do you mean? Me just walk around with my breasts open? Like, my ass showing in like public? What are you talking about? This is the type of wild stuff that people say.
God,
But then also people who would like talk to me just because like I would get a new hairstyle done, and then they start to like use that as the basis of their conversation, and like I can see right through that. That really affected me in terms of the idea of intimacy, the idea of being connected to someone, because it's like, will I always be looked at for those features? I know in general, when you're with someone, of course there is like certain, that physical attraction is important. At the same time, there's one thing to say that you are attracted. There is, and feeling that affection towards me, but there's another thing to just be like, I'm only with you because all I can see is that black skin, that bum, that hairstyle. And that's the only thing that sends people's sexual drive up.
Like, have you seen New Girl?
Yes, that TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have, and like Schmidt dating Cece. The fact that Cece is Indian and hot can relate. Just the things that he says, and it sounds like so absurd that nobody would ever say it, but that's like not true, and people have absolutely said it. I wonder what people expect. Like, do they expect me to like rock up in a sari with like lingerie underneath? Like, do you want me to let you lick a samosa off me? Like, I don't understand. People will say like, oh, speak Indian to me. I was like, bitch, that's not a language. Are you stupid? Go back to geography class. I was like, Hindi, Punjabi, Gujarati, Urdu, which one do you want? Let me go through the multiple choice question and then I can give you sexy talk. But there have been so many times where I don't even know how many times it's happened. And this definitely is like also me because I picked these people and I also played into my race being sexy. There were some points, maybe when sex got boring like halfway through, or like I don't even know, but like people would be like, say something sexy to me, and I have a sexy voice, welcome to the podcast. But I would like whisper like benchord and just like call them absolute slurs and say swear words at them in a sexy, and they would just be like, oh my god, this is so amazing, and I'm like, you have no idea what I just said. I literally could have been saying like, please go move your car, and they would have been like, oh my god, that's so hot, and I'm like, it's just so strange. I feel like it's just so strange. Anyway.
Yeah, I think I want to kind of transition more now into a conversation of actually being in an interracial relationship and looking at whole idea of family, their family, your family, the kids thing, and just comparisons that are made in that dynamic. I guess, what are your experiences with, meeting someone's family or dealing with like microaggressions or just in general the stereotypes that are attached to interracial dating?
It definitely is hard to be intimate with somebody who benefits from systems and has so much privilege within them. It's just hard to be intimate with them. And I've had a partner who at the end of our breakup said, it's always one thing after the other with you. And I was like,
wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just really hard to hear that, because I was like, I haven't done anything. I've made the best out of my circumstances, and I'm trying to explain my life as you do with a partner.
Yeah.
But a lot of like just traumatic stuff has happened to me, and I was like, it's always one thing after the other. I was like, you drank too much and you were avoidant dickhead. Like, don't tell me I was one after the other. I was doing the best that I could, with what I had. Yeah, meeting the parents is definitely a very, very daunting thing, particularly if they are white, because I feel like I have to look like excellent. Like I have to look beautiful, and I have to look successful, and I have to look this while I'm dating a dude who like wears chinos and like burnt up sneakers. Like I think they not that they felt entitled to my story, but I felt like sometimes when I was going over there, it felt like I was just really fascinating to them. Like they're like, oh my god, tell me about your life. This is exciting. I feel like, I have to be like on some weird like performative stage. Like I feel like I'm going to a job interview every time I'm attending like a family dinner. I don't know. Have you felt that?
For myself, I definitely relate to a lot of things that you talked about. My experience is actually quite interesting because I was coming from a place where, going back to what I talked about, I didn't like men, didn't like people, had no desire to be dating anyone. I wanted to be Miss Independent,
Yes.
live my life, earn money, have kids one way or another. Then first year uni, that decided to, life just decided to happen and things just took like a whole 360. And I found myself in a position where I was feeling a lot of things that I didn't really expect or was fighting to stop feeling. When I came to start dating my boyfriend, one of the biggest things that I was worried about was, because this person was not Black in one way or another, how is his family going to deal with me? Like, how are they going to perceive me? How are they going to feel about me? But then at the same time, I think a part of me didn't really give a crap. Like, I was like, if they think certain things about me because of stereotypes, that's their business. I've
Mhm.
already dealt with that shit, like,
Yeah.
growing up black. So I'm still going to date your son. Like, I'm still going to date.
Yes.
Like, that's the energy that I was taking into it. Like, very much extremely positive and very much like accepting and I didn't really deal with like many microaggressions at all. Of course, there are definitely things that they could not relate to, or he could not relate to because he's not black. And so when it would come to having conversations about race or conversations about what I'm going through, and when I think about this year in particular with the whole Black Lives Matter thing, all I wanted from them was a space to be. I mean, I've been with this person for like a few years now. All I wanted was them to make sure that they weren't, you know, going to isolate me from being able to talk about how I'm feeling. They treated me with have been treating me with a lot of respect, giving me a lot of space to speak when I want to and listening actively.
That's
But I
awesome.
know there's obviously going to be times where they just don't get it. Of course they're not going to get it. Like,
Yeah.
but as long as they're willing to be like, we recognize our privilege and we're going to do our part and we're going to continue daily to make sure that this space is comfortable for you, then
Yeah.
that's what I respect. Like my boyfriend now, when I do have conversations about race, he very much shuts up and doesn't speak over me, doesn't say, oh, how about this, how about that, but then there are times, of course, that there are slip ups that where he thinks he's being meaningful, trying to protect me from things, but it's not necessary. And that's where we have our learning moments, and that's great. There's been a lot of learning steps to be comfortable with my Black identity and his identity. And I don't really feel tired when I talk about anything to do with Blackness at all, because actually, to be honest, I talk about that so much, like, and I really couldn't care less if that exhausts the other person. Like,
Yeah,
if
for
it
sure.
exhausts you, then you've got a problem that you're still not recognizing your privilege. I've got that from Black people. I've got that from people from other different backgrounds, and they're like, oh my God, your kids are going to look so exotic. Back to the word. Like,
Oh my God.
and
Yeah, that's what I was doing too.
I'm like, that's disgusting. Like that is disgusting. Like, why are you fetishizing the idea of what my children will look like?
Did you think
That
about
is,
this when they were saying that to you?
you know what?
Or is it
Sometimes
in hindsight
in
now?
in hindsight initially, but now because I'm so aware of it,
Yeah.
I think about it straight away. And
Yeah.
I just, like, when people say like things like that, I don't even say anything. Most of the time I don't say anything, and I just give that look that is the usual Angelica wants you to shut up look.
Yeah.
This person who's got a mixture of two different things is more beautiful, or because they've got a combination, like that exoticism is like accentuated even more. But there's also still an element of, especially if it's with anyone who's white,
Yeah.
that they're closer to that beauty stand, that colonial beauty standard. It was very frustrating for me when I would get people telling me, like, or having assumptions that that's what I wanted from my relationship, or that's part of the reason why I was with a white guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, kids is the last thing on my mind right now is
Yeah.
what the person coming out of my vagina, what they're going to look like.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about
Yeah,
that right now.
exactly. Yeah.
And never was. Why would I ever seek someone out so I could have certain babies with them?
Like I feel like the reason why I had trouble answering your first question about microaggressions and meeting the family is because I was like, I don't think there were that many. But I think the reason why I didn't feel that many microaggressions is because I had no connection to my Indian heritage at all. I feel like I did in a way where I spoke the language and I watched the movie and I kind of spoke to my family. I didn't see myself as an Indian person. I was like, I am just neutral.
Yeah.
I am an alien. I am exotic. I played into that so much. But the thing was, is like how I switched. Like in white spaces, I tried to be like as devout of my race as possible.
Yeah.
With flirting and then dating is a very interesting like paradigm that I shift in between. I think at first when I'm flirting, I play up the exoticism and the race and everything a lot more. because I think it'll make me attractive and like fun and cool. And yeah, I thought, you know, I also was like, I want mixed race babies. I played into that. And then playing up your race to like get someone to fetishize you and sleep with you, and then to meet their parents, and then try to not be Indian. Like I just tried to
Yeah.
be as, I just want you to see me as me. Honestly, it did help that I was light skinned and I had blonde hair, and like I feel like I was looking racially ambiguous because I thought all of that was cool, and I was like, I don't want people to see me for any different. I think at the end of the day, like especially with my racial awareness now, I would want a partner that just stood up for me. I think that also is just, you know, a lot of people in my
Yeah.
life have let me down in my entire life. It's just been time and time again, and the only thing I've ever really wanted is just a partner to like, you know, just really stand up for me, whether that be like through racial inequality, but yeah, particularly if they're white family, or you know, any other race has something problematic about Indians, I would just want them to stand up for me when I'm in the room, but especially when I'm not, you know.
You know, then certain situations have happened, and he has defended me pretty much on every occasion. But then, of course, it's the times where you're not in the room that you start to get worried about.
Yeah.
You're like, are you willing to tell your family that they are being bigots
Yeah.
if they say something that's really ignorant? In particular, I remember, you know, with the Black Lives Matter stuff, I was telling him, like, I may not be there, but if someone does say something, especially if they're close to you, how are you going to respond?
That's an important conversation to have.
Yeah, it really is. But a lot of people are scared of it, and because it comes down, I can't speak for other relationships, but as a Black person, sometimes you're like, I don't want to have these conversations because you're fearful that it's going to affect the dynamic of the relationship. And it's very sad that people have to think that way.
Yeah.
You should be able to have those conversations. You need to, it is a must for anyone who's dating someone who's white. Like, it is a must, because you need to know that you're not going to be put in unsafe environments. I've had a friend who's she's Black, and she's dated someone who's Malaysian.
Mm.
And the racism that this person went through is like, and the things that would be said behind closed doors that she then became aware of was so disgusting. But she always knew that she was going into an unsafe environment that wasn't respecting of her background every time that she was with that person's family, or with and that is very scary. That should never happen. And that's what makes this whole this whole interracial dating thing is so complex, because you're like, you don't want to be in that situation. You don't want to experience that. But unfortunately, that's the reality of so many people.
I feel like interracial dating is either seen as a challenge or is completely colorblind. And what I actually want to get to is a point of radical acceptance. Because if someone is colorblind and they don't see my Indianness, then you don't see me. Like pretending that you don't have a color and that, you know, you don't actually see me as a real person. And also, yeah, just going back to what you said before, just because like I'm your girlfriend doesn't mean that you get like a I'm not a racist card.
Oh, that is a big one.
That is huge.
That's huge.
I've just had hesitation dating women who are POC but have not come out to their parents yet. And I think because I'm very disconnected to my parents and I didn't really care. Like, in all honesty, I was in a safe environment enough to be like, bye, mom, I'm out. Also, I love pussy. Like, it was fine for me. It wasn't really like that big of an issue. I have been on like a few dates and I've like tried to pursue things with women who come from cultures and maybe they also live at home where their families are not accepting of them and they have to like hide in secret. And horrible as it is, I understand that everybody's on their own journey and you know it's obviously very difficult for them, and I think it's just a really hard position to be put in for both people. You know, some people have to hide, but if somebody's already in the closet and then they bring home somebody from another race, that's just like that's just two things that like, and I know that's also not fair, but it's just really hard to date somebody who maybe isn't in full acceptance of their sexuality, to hide and also be a person of color. It feels like it's just way too hard. And then maybe that's been like honestly a big reason why I have been in significantly long relationships with cis hetero men. Maybe because I think it's, you know, these situations are too hard, and maybe that's not fair. Maybe that's what people think of me, you know? They're like, she's all this family trauma and like bisexual. I don't know. I don't really know how to articulate this one. I think why I've gravitated more towards white people and, you know, cis people and hetero people has just honestly been because I felt like it has been easier, and then my culture is what I can like bring to it in whatever way that I want. And most of the time it was disconnecting from it. But dating another person of color, or dating a queer person of color, or dating a queer person of color that is still in the closet, and then a queer person of color that lives with their family, it's just too much. And I feel like if I can be like, I guess, if I can bring the trauma to a privileged person, maybe it just balances it out. And I feel like maybe I've been too scared to have somebody that is on a similar privileged playing field, because yes, I do want that intimacy and I do want people to understand me and not have to justify myself. But
Yeah.
also I'm scared that that will just be too hard. Maybe that's just why it's just been easier to gravitate towards situations that are easy, or people that are, you know, fit colonial beauty standards, or have families that are middle class, white, and privileged, because it feels easier and I can step into these spaces and not have to clash cultures, or, you know.
I was more concerned in my circumstances that my culture was just so different to this person's that it wouldn't work. Like regardless of how much like I loved them and whatever, like that it just wouldn't work out. And I think now that I think about it in hindsight, perhaps that another layer to me avoiding just men, people of different backgrounds, and just in general, was that I was just afraid that people just wouldn't, if I was to be attracted to anyone who wasn't very specifically Igbo, Nigerian, you know, just be so complicated trying to get them to understand the nature of the cultural background.
Yeah.
It's almost like like in a way, weirdly a reverse. Like as much as I was trying to, or felt this feeling of not wanting to be with someone from my background, at the same time, I was afraid of being with someone who's not from my background, because I just didn't want to be put in a situation where I was struggling with that cultural exchange, or I would have to let go of part of me to fit their standards, or to avoid my culture. You get worried about the idea of losing part of your culture, but then sometimes that's what you want. I'm much more aware and in love with my Blackness. I'm like, I could never like let that happen to me. I'm sure that's the same with you, like coming into a place of accepting, you know, your Indian heritage. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're like, how could I ever want to have that washed away from me?
I think I also want to touch on a lot of the media that I saw around interracial dating. It was very limited, but the times that I did see it, it was always white man, white woman, plus other race. Like,
Yeah.
it was always everybody and the white race. It was never like a black or Indian, you know? Hey, Angelica, how you doing? But like I never saw that as much, and I feel like I never saw dating a white person as like some sort of statement or something to defend. But I also worry that if I do have a relationship with another person of color, that I will spend more time defending my relationship than actually having one. That's just a fear that I have.
It's a very common fear, because it's it's something that I experience, but I'll get into after you finish.
I've only been in long-term relationships with like cis male and women, and white. So I haven't been in a lot of long-term relationships with people of color. So that has also meant that I haven't had a lot of time to really understand what defending a relationship would really feel like. Also, there's so much privilege in me being light skinned. Like, people are like, she's Greek, she's Turkish, she's whatever. That has made dating for me a lot easier, and I will acknowledge that. But the one thing that I also want to talk about is how difficult it is as a person of color, as a queer person of color, to date white women who look like the colonial beauty standard. That has absolutely ruined me, particularly with somebody who, you know, came from a long history of having an eating disorder. Like, I wanted to be blonde, blue-eyed, thin, curves in all the right places. But then because then you flirt with these women and you like try to get them into bed and it's all fun and great, but then they get naked and then I get naked and I'm like, I'm looking at what I should look like. How am I supposed to be intimate with that? And I feel like that's such a foreign experience, and maybe people that do date the same gender will relate to that, is especially if you feel like your partner is more colonial beauty standard and that you're just here. That could also be my eating disorder talking. That's so difficult. I hardly can get properly intimate with those people because my insecurities, they're usually like, I keep them at bay and I can work through them. But when I date or sleep with a blonde woman with blue eyes or green eyes who is petite, I can't do it. I literally just can't do it. And I feel like that maybe that's horrible to discredit them, but imagine if every time you have sex with this partner, you're having sex with what society perceives you to be, and then you have a history of an eating disorder, wanting to look like this person. How the hell are you how are you supposed to be intimate with that person?
Yeah.
You know, that's so difficult for me, and that's something I have to work through. But I'm sure a lot of like queer couples could, or yeah, queer people can just relate to that as well.
Yeah, I think that's such an honest reflection. And if you do relate to that, actually, that would be really, if you are comfortable sharing that with us, that'd be cool. Because I do feel like that experience has not been highlighted enough in our society because of the stigma that and the discrimination that is experienced from people who are queer.
Yeah.
And I, for one, myself cannot relate to that, but it's so important that we acknowledge that because that's something to unpack the.
It's like having sex with every girl that you see on Instagram.
Mm,
Imagine
yeah.
if you were having sex with every girl that you thought was hot on Instagram. That has been my life. No, I'm kidding. um, but yeah, it's very, very uncomfortable. And then it also becomes this very strange thing where I'm like, I have to please them and everything is about them. And I lean into like a very like giving role. And
Yeah.
I don't really ask for what I want, which is absolutely not me. But in these scenarios, like I'm just too scared to communicate. I'm too scared to ask for what I want. And I'm like, you are the queen, my queen. So
Yeah.
let's just give you everything on a silver platter. And it definitely feels like maybe not an inadequacy, but it feels like a power imbalance.
Yes. That's it. A power imbalance.
Yeah, and like they have been genetically gifted, or they work out a lot, or they are white. Like they can't help that. I also can't help the fact that their beauty has been shoved at me, and people are lightening their skin to look like you, and now I'm sleeping with you. Like it's just very uncomfortable, and I don't think a lot of people who are queer talk about that enough. So just from speaking about sleeping with the enemy, the
The enemy.
sleeping with the colonial woman. That's not right. Let's start that again. So I also want to ask you, do you think you have racial preferences or are you racist? And also, how do you find self-love through that?
Ooh, it's such a loaded question.
Yeah.
I think now being in an interracial relationship
Hmm.
with a white man,
Yeah.
the assumption that that people have thought about that my preference is for white people. No. And my boyfriend also knows this. I was like flat out like, I didn't expect to like you at all. Like I was pretty much the only thing that I was feeling avoidance of, because at the time I was still going through so much violence.
Mhm.
I wanted to avoid people within my own tribal community in Nigeria. I've had to deal with the racial issues that concern my avoidance of people within my own specific tribal community. That comes from not wanting people to be so involved in the experiences that were going on in terms of violence. I just wanted to not be part of community gossip or be part of or feel like I was not protected, because again, it's very much male dominated.
Mhm.
And so your experience as a woman so difficult, and so like, especially when you are someone experiencing any type of violence, it's really difficult to actually have anyone stand up for you sometimes.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but sometimes. And so my preference was to avoid feeling any pain that would be attached to that. But there were certain different culture groups that I I didn't want to or didn't ever see myself being with, because I thought they were very racist to people like me, and pretty much they were, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to be put in situations where I was with another POC background that didn't like the idea of black people, saw black skin as like, lesser than skin that's more fairer, and I just didn't want to experience that.
Yeah.
So there were definitely preferences that existed there, but they weren't that significant.
Mhm.
Again, comes back to that point of I just struggled to have any love for myself as a woman, as a black woman.
Mhm.
I was like, how could anyone supposedly love me, like wherever they're from? And it's really sad to say, but I was like, how could anyone really love me? How could anyone love what I've gone through? How can anyone love, all these stereotypes that are attached to black women? Like,
Yeah.
I'm put at the bottom of the barrel. Like, I'm not desirable, but yet people fetishize over me and certain features that I have and want to be like me. Like, I'm confused. And then I had to really reconcile with myself when I started dating the person that I'm with now, as to did that come out of a place of me having a preference for you being like white? Did it come, or do I have some desire for Greek people? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I was just like, I had to really think about that a lot, and I can honestly say, for me, regardless of what assumptions people would like to make about when black women date outside their race,
Mhm.
it doesn't really come from a place of being having a preference for him. There's a lot of other stuff that is attached between my life and his life
Yeah.
that connect us both. And then in this relationship now, I can truly say that I love myself and I will never compromise my black identity and my love for my blackness for this person. I don't care if I end up marrying him and it's like 15 years. If something comes up and that is jeopardizes the love that I have for myself as a black woman, goodbye.
Yeah.
Like, that's as savage as I'll
Hashtag
be.
fuck loyalty.
Exactly. Like, because it's just I feel like now black women have come to a place of having to fight these society standards and come to a place of finally loving themselves.
Yeah.
And there's a whole concept that exists called black love and that sort of thing within the black community, and I love that so much. I love that so much. And I've had to have, initially at the beginning of my relationship, I was fighting those like internalized feelings of, hang on, am I betraying my community because like I'm
Yeah.
not embracing black love and everything? But I was like, you know
Mhm.
what? Look, at the end of the day, who I love is who I love, and how I
Yeah.
feel about them is just no one will understand unless I express it properly to you. I will still be very wary of who I date,
Mhm.
because I know that racism is still exists.
What?
You're like,
Crazy.
"Huh?" And fetishizing still exists. As long as you're not a racist prick to me and
Mhm.
you are ready and willing to recognize I'm not going to put my blackness aside for you,
Yeah.
then I'm okay. Like I'm open to dating you. I think being brought up in Australia and the racism that we experience as POC people
Mhm.
from white people here, it does make you have a preference that's like, nah, I don't want to deal with that.
Mhm.
And so I wonder, if I was not in this relationship anymore, would my preferences or my idea of preferences change? I
Yeah.
think they would, because of the self-love that I have for me now.
Mhm.
But I can't obviously see that yet because I'm not in that situation.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think the idea of people do have to constantly think about the preferences that they have. Is it coming from a place of you being racist, you being discriminatory to a certain group? Is it coming from a place of self-hatred for yourself and for your community? If it is, especially that, then you need to reconcile with that ASAP. But then again, preferences evolve, in my opinion, because you become more aware of yourself,
Mhm.
of your culture, how much you want to attach to your how much you want to attach yourself to your culture, how much you want to detach yourself. Different life circumstances come in, or you might just have experiences with people that just make you again influence your perception, and you just constantly have to think about the origins of where that's coming from.
Yeah,
Because if
exactly.
you don't, you might be running the risk of you being a very racist and prejudiced person, or
Yep.
you just hating yourself and you don't even realize it. I think for you, actually, as we wrap up,
Yep.
Have you had to reconcile that in certain dating environments, like online dating? Or what's your, like, you know, I feel like in, you know, the digital world that we're in,
Yes.
it's so tricky.
Yeah,
It's so tricky,
absolutely.
this whole concept of dating outside of your racial background. Or have you had any experience with online dating that relates to that, or just in general?
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, definitely with online dating, I have to be very conscious of how much time I'm giving to people's profiles. Like, I know it's like addictive and it's like left or right, but even with that quick judgment, I have to think about, why am I not clicking to the end of their photo? Is it because they have a fish? Is it because they have their middle finger up? Is it because they have, you know, a white savior like trip from Africa or India?
Yeah,
Immediately I'm like, no thank you.
no.
I saw one dude that had, like, I think he had been teaching English in India at a girls' school. It was just a bunch of like young Indian women. I'm like, I don't even know what that conversation is going to be like. So no thank you. Yeah, I definitely have to be very conscious of that, because I'm very aware of it as well. That I know that since I've dated mostly white men and women, and there's also another question to bring into the fact of, I have mainly dated white men and women for long-term relationships, but all my casual flings have been like POC. Maybe they weren't the right people, and that could be pure luck. Or it could be that maybe I just thought it was too hard and I didn't pursue anything as well. You know, there's like definitely two sides to that. But yeah, definitely have to be very reflective on online dating. Honestly, it just, maybe it's just the area that I live in or the people that match with me, but most of them end up just being white men and women anyway. I go on the dates and it's the, where are you from, or like what background, what nationality.
Uh,
It's constant. Every single date, Angelica, I can't even describe to you. Like, if somebody doesn't ask me, I'm like, they're the one. Yeah, even when I see a Sikh man wearing a turban, I'm like, oh no. Like, I have this like reaction. I'm just like, like, it just reminds me of my abusive family, similar to what you said. I'm
yeah,
just like, because it reminds me too much of my dad, and it just freaks me out. And maybe it's just like the same like sight of him, but also that's not fair to those people as well, because
exactly.
I'm also Punjabi and they're Punjabi. Like, why am I just eradicating them? So I definitely think I have to work on that. But I think most of the time, now that I've become conscious of that, I try to look at people's profiles for like as long as possible, and I give them the due diligence, and then decide. Because I definitely was like very snap judgment, and I personally just found myself just like saying yes to white people more often, honestly. And that was like a scary thing to realize when I was like actually like reflecting and doing it consciously. I'm like, what am I doing? like I
Mm.
like I click on like one POC person. I'm like, oh no. But then I click onto 3 pictures of a white person, and then I'll say no. So I have to, like, this is me like, gosh, when I started using online dating, when did Tinder come out? God, I'm so old. No, I feel like, yeah, I think, yeah, because of a lot of internalized racism that I had, and I craved a lot of white validation, that's just subconsciously what I like seeked out, and that's very honest. I'm not proud of that, but at least I'm admitting it to myself, and I have consciously tried to revert away from that. But I don't know what it is. Like, there was a while where I was like trying to date like British men or women, because I thought if
Mm.
I thought if I slept with a British person, years of colonialism would like just be erased in multiple orgasms. I was like, this will do it.
Mm.
Um, this is what the Indian freedom fighters were really fighting for, Um,
Yeah.
oh boy, Fair and Lovely? Nah, Fair and my pants. Shut up. No, I have to tell you something really embarrassing. Why do I always share the most embarrassing stories on this podcast?
I
But
love it.
you're
I'm here
welcome,
for
guys.
it.
Yeah, because I think I wanted to reclaim, because I think I was definitely getting annoyed with like the where are you from. I didn't realize it was racist. I was like, this is a really annoying question. Honestly, I didn't realize that question was racist until like 2 years ago, honestly. But I was like, I'm annoyed at this question. I don't understand why. But yeah, so I was trying to reclaim it in some way,
Mm.
So I got a vibrator, and it was white, and I called it White Invasion.
No, I'm going. But not.
I was like, I am reclaiming. I'm I'm reclaiming my body. I'm reclaiming. What are you gonna do, white man? I was like literally fucking colonialism every night, and it was great. So it's gotten me through some tough times, you know. But I feel like, you know, maybe I can't solve systemic racism in one day, and I can't take back years of colonization, but I can fuck white invasion.
Oh my God.
That's my legacy, and that's what I've done for systemic racism. You're welcome. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, truly.
Oh my God. So as we wrap up for today, jeez. Just as we were talking about, you know, reconciling with our own problematic views of like, so you know what? I'm gonna fuck it. Yeah, the podcast is finished once a day. I'm kidding. Well, so we're gonna wrap up here because Inez and I can't keep our thoughts together. But, thank you for listening all the way through.
Thank you. Yeah.
Please like, comment, share the podcast, interact
Yep.
with us. Feedback is always appreciated. And just in this whole conversation, remember that Inez and I's experiences are our own experiences. They are not dictating the experiences of people from our backgrounds at all.
Yep.
And I think it's very important that we all have a conversation about this and respect where each and every one of us are coming from. But
Yep.
if you're a bigot, I can't respect you anyway.
Yep. And I think it's
you
also
know.
important to remember that I've been quite honest with my reflections, even though I'm not proud of them. And I feel like we all have to do that if we're going to
Exactly.
get anywhere. Because that's the only way we will grow and change. Me reflecting on that I was swiping right quicker or giving white people more time on dating apps is something that I'm sure a lot of us are actually doing right now. And if you're not conscious of it, you can't change it.
Exactly. And in my circumstances, coming from a place of feeling immense hatred for myself that it affected any idea of dating in general, you know, reconciling with that, where it comes from, accepting that that's just who I am and my identity as a Black woman, and not giving that up for anyone.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to come to terms with that, reflect on your own experiences, reflect on the judgments you might have about other people too, because that's very important as well. Because if you don't reflect on your own judgments about others, when you come to date another person, you need to realize your own prejudices, maybe your own racist ideals, your own ideas of exoticism, fetishization, sexualization, even within your own culture as well. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to this topic, but thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next podcast.
Bye.
Bye.